Hello there. Dr. Kirk here again to talk to you about our abstract review. So last week I talked all about annotated bibliographies with you, and hopefully you are preparing your own this week. So please let me know if you have any questions as you're preparing those. This week we're talking about abstract review. So here is the assignment page on Blackboard. And this is pretty straightforward. So you're going to choose 3 abstracts, and I've included several of them here below. These are abstracts from the American Musicological Society, and I'll talk more about that in just a minute. But anyway, there are several just posted right here on this assignment page. So you can choose 3 of those, read them critically, and really just 3 things that we're looking for as you're reading that. First, the thesis statement. I can't drill this in enough. I know every time we talk about pretty much anything in this class, we're looking for the thesis statement. But as you can find with your own research topics, of course, the thesis statement is really important, and important to craft a clear, definable thesis statement. So that's the first thing. Look for that thesis statement. Is it clear? Can you find it? Did the author make that straightforward for you? Next, did they describe their research methodology? They should give you a good idea of what it is they're going to draw from, what research they've done, and what they're going to draw from to help prove their points in their paper. So sometimes people get carried away in their abstracts just giving a description or a summary of what it is they want to talk about or how interesting their topic is, and they don't really talk about how they're going to prove their main points. So next, do they summarize their main points and claims and how they plan to support them, which is what I was just talking about. So, and then lastly, you're going to type those up and you really don't need more than about half a page per abstract, but you do want to make sure you cover those main points. So is the thesis statement clear? And what did they say about their research methodology? And did they talk about their main points and how they plan to prove them? Okay, that's what we're looking for. So let me pop over to a few other abstracts that I have prepared for you. So a few years ago, I was asked by the American Musicological Society to be a council reader, which just means that I get to read all of the abstracts that are being sent in, or proposals that are being sent in, of people hoping to present their papers at the annual conference. And so I saved several, quite dozens really of them to show as examples for you all, because there are some really great and some less great examples that people sent in, but all of them, just like you guys, just like me, spent a lot of time preparing these and researching and writing and whatnot. And so we really want to take a look at what the main features are of these abstracts. So here's the first one. Hopefully you can see it. I tried to blow it up really big on my screen so that it would come across to y'all. So pardon me, this is about nationalistic and impressionistic themes in the guitar music of Spanish composers Manuel de Falla and Joaquin Turbina. So I'm going to read, I won't read all of this to you because I know you can read, but I wanted to at least draw attention to some of the main points as we go through. So this author, which this is a blind review, by the way, so I have no idea who the author of any of these are, just evaluating the abstract. So here we go. Throughout the respective time periods of classical music, Spain has consistently been a country whose culture remains highly guarded by its keepers and overlooked by listeners, musicians, and critics alike. I don't want to stop and talk about every single sentence, guys. We have other things to do with our time, but this is one of those sentences that I have commented to you before. I've commented before is not a provable sentence. So if you just say something like, this has been overlooked, we have no way of proving that exactly. So it's not a great way to start out. Anyway, let me go on. From the time of the Spanish Renaissance to the mid 20th century, there have been a plethora of composers from the elusive nation that have contributed greatly to the advancement of harmonic, rhythmic, and orchestral colors within the great sonic art of music. All right, that's an interesting and colorful sentence. Going on, the thesis statement of this research paper. That's one of the things we're looking for, right? So this author could not have made it more obvious for us by labeling it, right? So great, let's look. The research paper, or sorry, the thesis of this research paper reads as follows. Spanish Impressionism and Nationalism as displayed in the guitar music of Manuel de Falla and Joaquin Turina. Period. Okay, that's not a statement, right? That's a title, perhaps, topic as in terms of title, but that's not a complete sentence. So if we only look after the colon here, which the author says is the thesis, he says Spanish Impressionism and Nationalism as displayed in the guitar music of Manuel de Falla and Joaquin Turina. So that's a topic, but not a thesis. Remember, the thesis statement is supposed to argue something unique and not just a topic, not just a report on something, not just a description of something or something informative, but is supposed to present an argument. So if he had said that this Spanish Impressionism and Nationalism displayed in the guitar music of Manuel de Falla and Joaquin Turina is revolutionary because blah, 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 or is influential to all the rest of Spanish composers or whatever else, but this is only like the root of a topic. It is not really a complete thesis statement. So I'm saying all that to you when you are reviewing the abstracts that you choose. You may find the same type of thing, or you might find a less obvious. It's just interesting here that he labels the thesis statement, but then it's not exactly a statement. So let's go on. He gives two specific examples. And let me just scoot down a little bit. So he says these titles of these two specific pieces that he's looking at are, the Spanish word for homage, which is a tribute or dedication often for a deceased person. And he goes on to describe about who it's dedicated to and so on. So the true nationalistic qualities of Spain did not come to full fruition until the 19th century, when composers such as Albanese and Tárrega started composing music that reflected the nation's cultural spirit and depicted various places, landmarks, cities, and regions of the diverse country, in particular the southern regions of Spain known as Andalusia. This is getting a bit wordy. I'm sure you noticed that. It was the influence of composers such as Albanese and Tárrega and centuries of regional pride and ethnocentrism that lead to the great outpouring of the Spanish nationalist music during the late 19th century and early 20th century. Although Falla is more well known to the general public and music scholars alike today than Turina is, not great to end a sentence with is, by the way. There is still great respect for Turina, whose guitar works, chamber pieces, and orchestral writings are still performed throughout the world today. All right, and then there's a whole nother paragraph that's very descriptive. I'm just going to scoot down, and it actually has the comments that I typed into this author, which I hope you won't think I was being too mean to him. I wasn't trying to be mean. I was trying to be constructive. Okay, so here I said, this topic is very interesting, which I really do think it is. I appreciate the background information that you provided in addition to the research that you have done and brought forward to substantiate your main points. There are a few things that could make this abstract even stronger. However, first, it is long, far surpassing the 350 word limit at 485 words. Okay, so students, consider this. Whatever the recommended amount is, you need to stick to it. So on our abstracts, which we'll be constructing in a couple of weeks on our own research topics, I've asked you for about 300 words. And for most proposals that you would send in, whether to write an article or present at a conference or something like that, usually 350 words is a pretty standard amount, but whatever is asked for, do that. Don't do 100 plus words more, because many reviewers will not read those additional 100 words. They'll read up to 350 words and then say, okay, I'm done. So do budget your amount of words carefully. So anyway, second, although I suppose I should have said secondly, although you clearly labeled your thesis statement, it was more of a topic title than thesis. Your thesis statement should be at least one complete sentence that communicates not only your topic, but your argument. Argument, right? Lastly, although I appreciate that you provided full descriptions of many terms such as impressionist and homage for the AMS, that's the Musicology Society. For that audience, you included more than was necessary. These terms should be common knowledge. In other words, this may be more suited for a student symposium. So, and possibly it was a graduate student who was submitting this proposal. I have no idea who it was. I told you it was blind. But the point being, if you're writing for a scholarly audience, you can assume certain things like musical terminology, time periods. For example, you wouldn't have to explain the exact years of the Baroque time period if you're referencing it in your paper. All of us that would be reading it, that is any of your peers or me or other scholars, we would all know that. Whereas if you were writing for a journal that was to a general audience of people who are non-musicians and musicians alike, you would want to include that kind of description. So you're going to consider your audience, of course. For your papers and for this type of thing, you're assuming that other music scholars are the ones that are reading it and me. So those are the types of things that you would want to look for. You don't have to describe every musical term unless it's something that's very unique to the composer that you're discussing. All right, here's another one. I won't read zillions of them to you, I promise. So this one is, I'm not a musician, I'm a professional dancer. George Butterworth and the Morris Dance. All right, let's just jump through here. So George Butterworth was a British composer who worked alongside Cecil Sharp, or Cecil, I suppose, and Ralph Vaughan Williams, collecting and transcribing around 400 folk songs and dances during his brief lifetime. The dances that Butterworth primarily focused on were the Morris Dance, which was an elaborate choreographed dance using a combination of bells, swords, and costumes with quick hand and footwork by primarily male dancers performing to music in compound duple meter. Okay, that was a long sentence, but gosh, doesn't that sound interesting? Are you trying to picture it? I'm trying to picture what that dance would look like. These dances were a very important embodiment of the English folk revival, encapsulating the spirit of their national identity. Because of his involvement with the preservation of the Morris dance, Butterworth actually thought of himself more as a professional Morris dancer than as a musician. This stemmed from his work with Sharp and the English Folk Dance Society, where Butterworth used his talents to help in educating the British public about their dancing heritage through various performances, lessons, and films during the 1910s. Butterworth kept a diary reporting his hunt for Morris dances in 1912, providing a unique insight into how he went about collecting these dances, notating them and commenting on any similarities or differences he found. Using Butterworth's published diary along with notes, transcriptions, and materials Sharp and Butterworth created regarding the Morris dance, this paper examines the impact Butterworth had in the English folk dance revival, how he modified and created his own notation system when transcribing these dances, and concluding with why he saw himself as a professional dancer rather than as a composer. Okay, that is an interesting topic. That's not one that I have researched, so I do find that interesting. So let's see what I commented here. To this author. This is a very interesting topic. I appreciate what a thorough description of the Morris dance. I think some of this cut off, but anyway, Butterworth's interest in this. However, this abstract is quite short, approximately 100 words shorter than the prescribed maximum of 350, and consequently somewhat lacking. In the last sentence, you provided the research materials that you plan to draw from to make your points. I would like more detail of these, especially of his own use of notation that might help a reader understand better. So again, the length matters. If they tell you you can use 350 words or on yours 300 words, don't do 200 words. There's a lot more that you can include with the space that you have. So again, three main points that you're looking for. One is a concrete thesis statement. Like, this is the thing that I am arguing in this paper. Secondly, this is the research that I am drawing from. And thirdly, this is how I am going to prove my points. Okay. And you ought to be able to cover those things succinctly in a good 300 to 350 words. Okay. All right. Let me read one last one to you. This one I think is especially interesting. Intermediary between two worlds, the role of Eric Simon in Benny Goodman's commissioning of classical music. In the late 1930s, clarinetist and band leader Benny Goodman represented the epitome of swing music and the American entertainment industry. Around the same time, he also added classical repertoire to his performance and recording portfolio, even commissioning numerous composers to write new pieces for him, ultimately at least 8 by Bartók, Milhaud, Hindemith, Copland, and others, presenting a notable section of 20th century clarinet repertoire. In this paper, I examine, first person, I, right? That's not great. Anyway, in this paper, I examine a yet unnoticed but crucial figure in that context, Eric Simon, a Viennese-born clarinetist and composer who fled the Nazi regime in 1938, and along with multiple other activities in the New York music scene, became Goodman's teacher for classical clarinet technique in 1940. Although scholars such as Walter Pass, Gerhard Scheidt, and Wilhelm Svoboda, I hope I said that correctly, as well as Horst Weber, or Weber, I guess, depending on his German, and Manuela Schwartz, have described elements of Simon's biography in the context of migration studies. His relationship with Goodman has not yet garnered more than a footnote in the literature. In 1941, Goodman turned to Simon for recommendations on which composers to ask for new clarinet concertos. All right, and this whole paragraph, by the way, I'm just going to jump ahead because it is really interesting background information, but it ends up being a little bit too long. So let me scoot to look at this last paragraph. In addition, I compare the Hindemith and Milhaud projects with Goodman's very first classical commission, Bela Bartók's Contrasts, was mediated by the violinist Joseph Szigeti, aiming to support the financially struggling composer, as recently shown by Bartók scholars Tibor Talian and Vera Lampert. Thus, I argue that Goodman's early commissioning projects were primarily instigated by intermediaries using their own networks and realizing their own agendas. Okay. That was wordy, but let me take a look here at just my comments, and then I'll make a few more to you. This is a very interesting topic, and I look forward to reading your complete paper. I appreciate that you provided descriptive background information and made a clear and concise thesis statement. This abstract is also very pertinent to the scholarship of contemporary music and how interrelated these different threads can be. Well done. And this is a very well done abstract, and I'll post all 3 of these on our course module for this week as well, so that you can just read through what it was I was reading through to you. It may be easier to see in front of you rather than me just reading it. But what I think is especially interesting, not only, of course, because I love Copland, and Benny Goodman did commission his clarinet concerto from Copland, which I think is really interesting, and these other composers, as he mentioned. But as you read through this whole abstract, he really puts the icing on the cake right here at the end. And we've discussed thesis statements really a lot, right? A lot about thesis statements. And your text on academic writing for graduate students, and it will talk about either you want the thesis statement at the bottom, right? Like you start more broad and general, and then you kind of work your way to a point, or you may go the other way around, have your thesis at the beginning and then become more broad. That doesn't matter so much to me as to which direction you do it, but you do want to make sure that it's clear. So this author chose to give a lot of background information to kind of set the stage for what he's talking about, those particular commissions and the clarinet repertoire and so on. And then he gets all the way to the end and says what he's arguing, right? So he's discussing all the background and then lays it out in a clear statement at the end. So I think that's very well done. not to make this too much Goldilocks, but we had one that was too long and one that was too short, and then we had one that was more or less just right. But different facets of or different aspects of these abstracts that we're really looking for. So in the ones that you are assessing this week, again, just like when we were looking at our critiques, the goal is you're looking at what other authors have done so that you can do it yourself. So we'll be assessing some abstracts this time, and then next we'll be crafting our own abstract. So again, looking for those three main points: thesis statement, research, and then how do you plan to prove your main points? And that's basically it. So enjoy reading those other abstracts. As usual, please let me know if you have any questions, especially as you're starting to develop your own thoughts on building your own abstracts, which you'll be doing shortly. So that's it for me. Take care, everybody.